At 6 in the morning, a chilly spring breeze swept through the quiet residential streets of Greenwich. The trees still bore traces of winter, showing only slight signs of budding. A few early morning shoppers were trickling into the Whole Foods parking lot. Linda Wilson trudged toward her front door with weary steps. Though she had just finished her night shift, she carried a paper bag containing bagels for Emma's breakfast. Their small Cape Cod-style house, now 15 years old, showed signs of needed repairs in various places, but with their current financial situation dominated by mortgage payments, those repairs would have to wait. As she unlocked the door and stepped inside, she heard small footsteps coming down from the second floor. "Welcome home, Mom." 8-year-old Emma bounded down the stairs, her blonde braids bouncing. Her big blue eyes were always filled with kindness and consideration for her mother. "Emma, no running," Linda gently admonished while embracing her daughter. "I bought bagels today. Cinnamon raisin, your favorite." While preparing Emma's breakfast in the kitchen, Linda checked her schedule on her smartphone. The screen was crowded with appointments. The week's schedule was like walking a tightrope, precisely planned down to the minute. Her parents' house was a 15-minute drive away. Her father George and mother Martha lived in a large colonial-style home. Her father struggled with diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease, while her mother dealt with arthritis and osteoporosis, requiring frequent hospital visits. Today was Saturday. The morning would be spent cleaning her parents' house and shopping. Restocking the pantry, checking her father's blood pressure, massaging her mother's arthritic joints. In the afternoon, she needed to drive her niece Sarah to her activities. Next Monday, she would take her parents to their medical appointments right after her night shift. Tuesday would be household chores at her parents' after her day shift. Wednesday was another night shift, but during the day she had to drive her niece around. Linda let out a small sigh at the endless schedule. Her nursing salary of $50,000 a year was depleted by supporting her parents and subsidizing her niece's activities. She had almost no savings. Still, her sense of duty as the eldest daughter kept pushing her forward. Her smartphone rang. The screen displayed Jessica, a call from her sister. Her flashy sister worked as a real estate agent, though with limited success. "Linda, can you cover for me with Dad's cardiology appointment next Monday? I've got an important contract coming up." Not again, Linda thought. This was the third time she'd asked to change plans. Jessica could schedule daytime work precisely because Linda handled all the caregiving. "Jessica, I'll be coming off a night shift on Monday. I've already changed my schedule 5 times this month." "You're the eldest daughter, aren't you? Do what you're supposed to do." Her sister's words were cold and dismissive. The call ended abruptly. At the kitchen table, Emma watched her mother, her math workbook lying open. Lately, Linda hadn't been able to find enough time to help with homework. "Mom, I drew this." On the paper Emma held out was a family drawing. Linda and Emma were in the center, surrounded by their grandparents and Nan's family. But Linda and Emma's figures were oddly small and drawn apart from the others. Emma's drawings, which her teacher had praised for their talent, always reflected her honest emotions. "Hey Mom, we haven't gone anywhere together lately. We haven't been to the art museum either." Emma's innocent words pierced Linda's heart. Indeed, consumed by caring for her parents and chauffeuring her niece, she hadn't been able to spend time with her daughter. Even weekends were consumed by household chores and shopping for her parents and driving her niece to activities. She pushed her exhausted body to its limits, desperately managing each day. Her average sleep was about 4 hours. Still, she never compromised on her work as a nurse at the hospital. But was this really the right thing to do? Her parents never expressed gratitude, instead constantly complaining. Her sister prioritized her own life and refused to help. And most importantly, she was losing precious time with her beloved daughter. Something significant was beginning to shift in Linda's heart. 7 o'clock on Saturday evening, March 15th. The chandeliers at La Scale overlooking Greenwich Harbor sparkled in the spring twilight. The upscale French-Italian restaurant was bustling with wealthy weekend dinner guests. "Linda, Emma, you're late." Martha, who had been waiting in the lobby, stood up. She wore a new designer dress and more elaborate makeup than usual. Beside her, George leaned on his cane, wearing a stern expression. Jessica's family had already arrived, Jessica in flashy attire, her daughter Sarah in an expensive designer dress, and her husband Michael in a suit, all seated on the sofa. "I'm sorry. Emma's art class." "Never mind the excuses. How inconsiderate to be late for a reservation." Linda silently nodded at her mother's words. In truth, Emma's art class had ended on time. However, fatigue from her night shift had made her shower run long, and then they'd been delayed when the first outfit she'd hurriedly prepared hadn't suited Emma. "Happy birthday, Aunt Linda." "Happy birthday, Emma." Sarah offered formal congratulations. Today's dinner was a family celebration for Linda and Emma's birthdays. Linda's birthday had been 3 days ago, and Emma's would be the day after tomorrow. It had been surprising when her parents suggested celebrating at an upscale restaurant. They were led to the main dining room. Heavy decor and crystal chandeliers. Silver cutlery was elegantly arranged on pristine white tablecloths. The gentle sounds of refined conversation and dinnerware echoed from surrounding tables. As they took their seats, Linda felt something was off. Her parents sat at the head of the table, with Jessica's family beside them. Linda and Emma were guided to seats at the far end. The arrangement seemed to isolate them from the family. "I've already ordered for everyone," her mother announced. Just then, the service staff began pouring wine. Deep red wine was poured into the glasses of her parents and Jessica's couple. However, only water glasses were placed before Linda and Emma. "Oh, you're not having wine. Right, you have to drive after your night shift." Jessica smiled maliciously. True, Linda had just finished a night shift, but this was a special occasion. Surely one glass of wine would be. Before she could voice this thought, the food arrived. Elaborate dishes appeared one after another before her parents and Jessica's family: foie gras tranche, truffle-scented risotto, poached lobster. Meanwhile, only water glasses sat before Linda and Emma. "Mom." Emma's voice was uncertain. "This should be enough for you too, right?" her mother said with a thin smile. Her expression revealed the disgust she had been hiding all along. "Fast food suits you better anyway." Sarah giggled at Jessica's words. Michael uncomfortably lowered his eyes. Tears welled up in Emma's blue eyes. Awkward glances came from surrounding tables. In the silence that followed, emotions Linda had long suppressed stirred powerfully in her chest. The monthly demands for support from her parents. The burden of her niece's expensive activities. The support she'd continued even while depleting her own savings. And yet, this treatment. Even worse was seeing her beloved daughter being hurt. Though young, Emma understood that this situation wasn't normal. Her pure heart was being wounded by the family's cruel discrimination. Linda slowly stood up. With trembling hands, she gently wiped Emma's tears. "I'm sorry about your birthday," she smiled at Emma. "But this will be the last time we have to endure this." Turning to face the entire family, she announced in an icy voice, "As of today, I'm stopping all support." The table froze at these words. "You must be joking," her mother exclaimed. "Linda, think this through." Her father gripped his cane tighter. "You can't." The color drained from Jessica's face. But Linda no longer heard any of their voices. Taking Emma's small hand, she strode confidently out of the restaurant. Sunday morning. Church bells rang through Greenwich's quiet residential area. Linda slept longer than usual. Last night's events at the restaurant seemed to have freed her from years of pressure. Emma's sleeping face beside her showed a peaceful expression she hadn't seen in a long time. Her smartphone overflowed with unread messages and missed calls from her parents and sister. However, Linda marked them all as read without opening them. Instead, she opened her calendar and began deleting all parent-related appointments. Medical appointments, shopping, household assistance. With each deletion, her heart felt lighter. Next, as she opened her email. Messages to her father's doctors. "Thank you for your care. I will be stepping away from my parents' caregiving. All upcoming medical appointments will be cancelled. The hospital will be contacted once new caregivers are arranged." Her hand showed no hesitation as she pressed send. She then deleted all transportation schedules for her niece Sarah's activities. Finally, she wrote a letter returning the spare key to her parents' house and sent it by express mail. "Mom, good morning." Emma awoke. Linda embraced her daughter. "Emma, let's go to the art museum today. There's a special Impressionist exhibition at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts." Emma's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Yes. From now on, we'll cherish our time together." That afternoon, chaos began at her parents' house. "We're running low on medication," Martha called out. Linda was supposed to refill it. I need to check my blood pressure, George muttered anxiously. What about tomorrow's cardiology appointment? They desperately tried to contact Linda, but neither calls nor emails went through. Meanwhile, the situation was serious at Jessica's house as well. What do you mean all of Sarah's activity transportation is cancelled? Jessica trembled with anger. Her phone had received confirmation calls from both the ballet school and piano school. Linda's sudden withdrawal disrupted the Monday and Wednesday transportation schedule. Do I have to drive them myself? What about work? She confronted her husband Michael, but he was also perplexed. My work is important too. Everything worked because your sister was handling it all, right? Jessica froze at these words. Indeed, Linda had taken care of everything until now. Her support had allowed Jessica to focus on real estate work and Sarah to enjoy expensive activities. Monday. The parents' confusion deepened. The refrigerator was nearly empty. The food supplies Linda regularly restocked were gone. The uncleaned house was dusty, and laundry piled up. Most serious were the medical complications. Your blood pressure is high, Martha said, removing the cuff from her husband's arm. 190. However, when they called the hospital, all appointments had been cancelled. Trying to make new appointments, they weren't accepted without a caregiver present. Should we call an ambulance? Martha suggested. Insurance won't cover it. Remember what Linda explained before. They finally realized just how much Linda had been managing all this time. Tuesday. Jessica had to cancel an important client meeting. It was for Sarah's activity transportation. Mom, I don't want to do ballet anymore. Sarah's voice was unusually weak. Everyone else is getting better, but I. Jessica couldn't even encourage her daughter. She had just learned yesterday that Linda had been covering more than half of the expensive lesson fees. Wednesday. Michael left work early. It was his turn to handle Sarah's transportation. Leaving early again. His boss's eyes were cold. Your performance has been declining since last month. Thursday. The situation finally reached a crisis point at her parents' house. I feel ill, George clutched his chest. We're out of nitro. It was an angina attack. They had no choice but to call an ambulance. They knew it would incur high medical costs, but there was no alternative. In the emergency room, the doctor inquired. Who manages his regular medications? Our daughter. Well, now. Martha stumbled over her words. That night, an argument erupted at Jessica's house. Why would my sister do this? Jessica shouted. You should know best. Michael's voice was cold. We all took her for granted. Friday. After a week, the family's collapse was definitive. Her parents' house was in disarray. Medication management, meal planning, everything was falling apart. Jessica had lost important contracts, Michael's work evaluation had dropped, and Sarah had to give up one of her activities. One day, a month after the support stopped, An emergency family meeting was called at the parents' luxurious Greenwich home. All family members except Linda were gathered. The living room had lost its former elegance. Dusty furniture, scattered medication boxes, piles of laundry. In just a month, the house had become unrecognizable. George had noticeably weakened since last week's emergency transport. Unable to properly manage his blood pressure, his diabetes numbers worsening, and his heart condition poor. The trembling in his cane-holding hand was more severe than before. Martha wore designer clothes, but exhaustion showed clearly. Arthritis pain prevented her from managing housework properly. Her osteoporosis checkup remained postponed. This isn't how it was supposed to be. Martha sighed. Everything started falling apart when Linda left. Jessica was completely worn out. Her expensive clothes and perfect makeup were now just a memory. In the past month, she'd lost 2 major contracts. Unable to focus on work while juggling Sarah's transportation and her parents' emergencies. "I don't want to go to ballet or piano anymore," Sarah said in a small voice. She'd given up one activity, but couldn't keep up with the remaining classes either. Constant lateness and early departures due to her parents' schedules had taken their toll. Michael had received a warning from his company. Frequent early departures and emergency leave. His performance decline was evident, and rather than promotion, demotion had been suggested. "What are we supposed to do?" Michael mumbled. "When she left our lives." Just then, they heard mail being dropped through the slot. The sender was Linda Wilson. The family held their breath. The envelope contained detailed calculations and a letter. Martha began reading with trembling hands. "Dear family. A month has passed. How much impact has the cessation of my support had? I'd like to discuss the role I've been playing all this time. I've been managing our parents' medical expenses, living costs, Sarah's activities, and other emergency expenses. The total amounts to $82,000 annually. This far exceeds my annual income of $50,000. I've been covering the shortfall by depleting my savings and taking out credit card loans. The time commitment was beyond imagination. 12 hours weekly for parents' medical appointments, 15 hours for household assistance, 5 hours for shopping, 8 hours for Sarah's transportation. Plus an average of 20 monthly hours for emergencies. All this in addition to my 40-hour weekly nursing schedule. As a result, my life approached collapse. Average sleep of 4 hours. Virtually no free time, depleted savings, struggling with insomnia and chronic fatigue. Most importantly, losing precious time with my beloved Emma. Emma lost time with her mother, forced to give up her own activities. Her studies began suffering, casting a deep shadow on her young heart. Most painful was that despite all these sacrifices, I never received a word of thanks from the family. Instead, I was constantly criticized, Emma faced discrimination, my sister made endless demands, and our parents only expressed dissatisfaction. The restaurant incident was merely the trigger. Years of accumulation finally reached its limit. This is the truth of our family. The reality of a distorted dependency masked as love. Please review the enclosed documents. Brochures for assisted living facilities for our parents, information about community programs to replace Sarah's activities, and a list of job placement agencies for Michael. I hope these will mark the beginning of your new lives. One last thing. I've enclosed Emma's family drawing. Our small figures pushed to the edge. This was how Emma saw our family. Linda Wilson. The family was speechless after reading the letter. So much. Martha's voice trembled. So much money, time. My sister sacrificed her own life. Tears flowed from Jessica's eyes. Working so late every night. Michael mumbled. And yet, we. Their eyes fell on a photo frame by the entrance. A family Christmas party photo. Only now did they notice how exhausted Linda looked despite her smile. Sarah began crying. I said such mean things to Auntie. Outside the window, a spring storm approached, as if foretelling the trials awaiting the family. We've done something terrible. George tightened his grip on his cane. Something unforgivable. No one could argue with those words. Now knowing the truth, all that remained was their deep regret and the harsh reality about to begin. And one more thing. An unplaceable envy toward Linda, who was presumably spending happy times with her beloved daughter. 3 months after the support stopped, on an early summer day, a real estate agent was appraising the colonial-style house in Greenwich's upscale residential area. Are your parents really decided on selling? The agent confirmed. The mansion was known as a prime property in this area. Yes, Martha nodded wearily. We're moving to an assisted living facility. Last month, George's condition suddenly worsened, resulting in a week-long hospitalization. Much of the medical expenses weren't covered by insurance, and their savings were nearly depleted. The high mortgage payments had also become a burden. The assisted living facility was about an hour's drive from Greenwich. Monthly fee, $12,000. Far from their former luxurious lifestyle, but the parents had no choice. I never thought this day would come. George muttered, his hand trembling on his cane. After Linda left, everything. Martha had been pawning her luxury brand clothes to cover living expenses. Her arthritis pain was worsening, and her osteoporosis treatment remained suspended. Jessica's downfall was even more dramatic. Sign the divorce papers. Michael placed the documents on the table. I can't take it anymore. After his demotion due to frequent early departures and poor performance, their marriage had deteriorated beyond repair. All of Sarah's expensive activities had been cancelled, and Jessica hadn't closed any real estate deals in weeks. Can't you understand how hard this is for me? Jessica shouted. Driving Sarah around, my work. You still don't get it, Michael's voice was cold. Your sister handled an even greater burden alone. They decided to leave their luxury apartment for a suburban one. A new life as a single mother. Sarah had to change schools and switch to activities at the local community center. Mom, I hate piano now. Tears glistened in Sarah's eyes. I just want time to play with my friends. While the family struggled with their troubles, Linda and Emma's new life radiated a quiet brilliance. Mom, look. I won a prize. Emma ran up to her, clutching her award-winning piece from the local art competition. It showed mother and daughter walking hand in hand. The brightly colored work overflowed with happy moments. Weekends were filled with museum visits and park picnics. On weekday evenings, they cooked together and had plenty of time for homework. Linda's work shifts became more regular, her sleep improved, and their savings gradually increased. Let's make lasagna tonight, Linda suggested. Your favorite recipe. The mother and daughter in the kitchen were more vibrant than ever before. One day, a letter arrived in their mailbox. It was from her sister Jessica. Linda quietly dropped the envelope into the trash. Having closed the door on her past and started a new life, she wouldn't look back now. Hey Mom, Emma squeezed her mother's hand. We're happy, aren't we? Outside the window, early summer sunlight shone brilliantly. The trees wore vivid green attire, announcing the arrival of a new season. That light gently enveloped the mother and daughter's new life. Perhaps this was the true form of family. A small but genuine bond of mutual care and support. Linda gently squeezed her daughter's hand back. Their story had only just begun. And it promised to be more radiant than they could imagine.